In Arkansas, an increase of 486 confirmed COVID-19 cases across the state from yesterday. It brings the overall total now to 74,772, along with more than 2,200 probable cases statewide. Active confirmed cases are down to 6,188. 651 antigen tests were performed. 112 of those were positive. 12 more deaths reported brings that total now to 1,060. More than 67,000 have recovered from the virus across Arkansas. During Governor Asa Hutchinson's weekly update today, he did release the state's winter strategy for battling the coronavirus. One of the efforts is to get as many of you as possible to go get a flu shot. They also like to perform 1 million COVID-19 tests by October 20th, increase consistency of state contact tracing, and to emphasize the importance of wearing masks and social distancing this fall.